There are a lot of budget USB audio interfaces in, let's say, the $50 to $150 range. And as I stated a few times on this channel before, I'm not a professional audio person, but I do find myself needing to record audio on occasion, like now, for instance. And potentially you feel the same way, which is why you're about to click off this video if I don't get to the point. So a couple months ago, after researching relatively budget USB audio interfaces, I decided to get the Audient evo4. And in this video, I'm going to tell you about this device and really why I chose it and what I think about it after using it for a few months. So a couple of disclaimers. The marketing push for the evo4 was about 10 months ago, so no, Audient did not send me this device. They don't know who I am, nor do they care. I paid for this with my own credit card. And secondly, I'm talking about this device for this particular use case, recording vocals, voiceovers, stuff like that, for YouTube, but not as a musician. I'm not a musician. So even though this is a fully fledged audio interface that's fully capable of recording all sorts of instruments, I'm not really going to be talking about that. So there's plenty of YouTube videos that you can search if you're more interested in the music aspect of it. So in this video, all audio is going to be routed through the evo4. I'm currently recording into the Rode Pod mic, through the Cloud Lifter, and into the evo4. If I make any changes to that setup, I will let you know as I make them. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what sets this apart and why I chose it. Why did I choose it? A, it looks different from just about everything else out there. B, it's really small. So if you are going to be using this on your desk and just kind of keep it plugged in and hooked up all the time on your desk, having something that's pretty discreet and can easily be tucked out of the way, doesn't take up a lot of space, is kind of a bonus. Another bonus is the fact that the XLRs and the combo jacks hook up in the back as opposed to the front, so just making routing easier and just keeping things out of the way. Thirdly is it sounds really good. The preamps are exceptionally high quality. Audient is, well regarded as a company that makes really great preamps, and I don't think they skimped out on the evo4. Lastly is that it is simple to use. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm not a professional audio person, so something that was, easy to use, easy to set up, has some appeal to me. Talking about ease of use, a lot of people who are getting into recording audio for the first time, one of the major hurdles or thing that can be a little bit confusing is setting your gain properly. A lot of people might set their gain too loud, resulting in audio that clips, or they might set it too quiet, resulting in audio that's just hard to hear, that needs to be boosted a lot after the fact. Ease of use feature number one is the smart gain feature. So what this does is automatically set the gain appropriately depending on the input that the device detects. So all you have to do to set the smart gain is just select the input. Here we only have one input it's the XLR microphone into one. Microphone 1 is highlighted. Now we just hit the smart gain button. It's now flashing between inputs 1 and 2, so it's waiting for you to select the input that you want to set the gain for. We want microphone 1, and then we just hit the smart gain button again. And when I do this, the audio is going to cut out, but you'll be hearing me through the on-camera microphone. So hit that, and now you can see how it's doing this sort of like wave thing. Now it's listening to my voice, and you keep talking into it for about 15 seconds, talking to it at the normal level that you're going to be recording your video in. Likewise, if you're playing an instrument, whatever the case is. And there you go. So now it listened to me and then went ahead and set the gain appropriately. Okay, so let's take a look at just the build quality and just the physical features and all the buttons and dials on the actual device itself. So build quality, I would say, is where Audient decided to save some money and keep the price of this thing down. It's all plastic, and it's kind of like this soft touch plastic that you can easily feel kind of creaking and actually hear creaking if you squeeze it too hard. Definitely not the most robust or durable build. I would be worried if it, took a fall. Don't drop it. So I don't think it's cheaply made. I really think that's where they decided to save some money, because where they didn't decide to skimp on anything is with the preamps, and I think with the quality of the electronics inside and all the functionality that this gives you. Even though the housing, all the buttons, etc., are plastic and not the greatest feeling, all the inputs are very durable and strong feeling. There's no wiggle. All of the XLRs, they plug in really securely and they don't jiggle around in there. Likewise, the headphone input feels very solid. There are 2 XLR inputs and they're combo jack inputs, so you can plug in, say, a drum machine or a keyboard. Anything that has a line level input will go in here as well. There's 2 1/4-inch monitor inputs, so any powered monitors that you want to drive with the evo4 you can plug in here. There's the USB-C for power and also interfacing with your computer. On the front of the device, there is a a jack for the same type of cable that you would plug like your electric guitar or bass into an amplifier will go into this front jack, and that will be routed into input 1. So if you did have a microphone plugged in input 1, it will override it, and that will now be your instrument input. And then lastly, there is a headphone input, and it is a 1/4 inch input. So if you don't have one of these connectors, you're going to need one. It's just a more solid professional connector, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but just something to be aware of. All the buttons and the one dial are on the top of the device. So you have inputs 1 and 2. You've got 48 volts of phantom power. It will drive 2 mics with 48 volts of phantom power if needed. You've got the smart gain button. And then this button over here is your monitor mix. This lets you monitor if you have playback on your computer. If you have the wheel turned to the right, it's going to play back what's coming through your computer speakers or headphones. And then if you spin it to the left, it's going to monitor what you have going into the inputs on the device itself. And then you can just mix between those two things depending on how much of one versus the other you want to hear. And then you've got the headphone or monitor volume. So this changes the volume of what you're hearing on your headphones or on your monitors on your desk. In order to set the gain, if you wanted to do it manually, as opposed to using the smart gain feature, you would just select whatever input you want to set the gain for, and then just turn the dial until you get the appropriate levels. So it's pretty easy. Even though this one dial controls everything on the device, it's easy to see what thing you're actually controlling because it's lit up. You can also mute your sources, so just hold for 2 seconds and it will start flashing. And your mic can be muted. Likewise, you can mute your headphones or monitors by holding it down, and then the little indicator light will flash on and off to show you that it's in fact muted. So next I just wanted to show you the app. So on my screen here, you can see on the left, this is just Adobe Audition. This is not the app. You have to pay for this separately if you want it. But on the bottom right, we've got the Evo control panel. And you can see how it basically just duplicates the top of the evo4. So you've got input 1, and you can adjust the gain on it. So if I just drag this down, you can see how it's turning my mic down, and also that's being reflected on the surface of the actual interface. You can set your smart gain on the app as well. You can turn on phantom power. You can mute the mic. You've got the monitor mix here as well, and your overall volume, your headphones or your speakers or monitors, and likewise you can mute those from here. So it just duplicates everything that you have on the surface of the evo4 right here in the app. And now on the top right, we've got the Loopback Mixer. Let me go ahead and play Gerald Undone for us. And you can see how we're getting the audio from our computer mixed into the audio from the microphone. And if you wanted to just go ahead and record without doing any mixing on the back end, you can just mix right here from this little app. So you can change the levels that are coming in from the loopback channels 1 and 2. You can change the levels of the microphone and your overall output. And if you did want to have more control, if you wanted to use a DAW, digital audio workstation like Adobe Audition, you can set it up to have each of those channels, recorded as a separate channel. Just a lot of really cool functionality that you get along with the device itself. So how much gain is there? So this device has a total of 58 dB of gain. It can subtract up to -8 dB from a source and add up to 50 dB, which isn't a lot, but the good thing is that it's really clean, so no matter how high you have the gain cranked up, the noise floor remains pretty quiet. So I just want to do a quick comparison or demonstration using the Shure SM7B. You can see it's routed into XLR input 2, and there's no cloud lifter or other inline preamp attached to the SM7B. It's just the mic going straight into the evo4. So if I talk about the same distance that I've been from the pod mic this entire time, you can hear the levels that I'm getting out of the SM7B. And I'll also just go ahead and demonstrate that I do have the gain cranked up all the way. So in my opinion, it's pretty quiet, but if you want to be really close to the microphone, which you can do with the SM7B and get a really nice sound from it, these levels are actually a little bit hot. So let me turn that down a little bit. So this is the way you want to use your SM7B and the evo4. This is completely doable, and this sounds awesome, but I would say that not everybody always wants to be talking right into the top of their microphone, in which case, going to need a little bit more gain And I would say unless you're just really loud or just have a very powerful voice, you're probably going to want a cloud lifter or other inline preamp to go with the evo4 if you're pairing it with dynamic microphones, especially something like the SM7B. All right, so let's go ahead and just wrap up this video. Let me just recap what I think are the pros and cons of the device, starting with the cons. For spoken word applications, if you're using dynamic mics like the Shure SM7B or even the Pod mic, it is a little bit quiet. So depending on how close you are to it and how loud you are, you may or may not need something like a cloud lifter or other inline preamp. But I would say as a general rule, you're probably going to want to have one with this device. Con number 2 would be the somewhat chintzy build quality. The third con is that I wish there was a bit more legibility on the device itself in terms of what your gain is, whether that was in the form of just like numbers to tell you where you are, or if it were color-coded, like green, yellow, red, like you'll see on most devices and digital audio workstations. The fact that you can see that stuff in the app makes up for it, but still it'd be nice to have it on the physical device itself. And speaking of the app, the fact that the loopback function is only enabled and controllable on the app is kind of a negative, but I would say that the fact that it has that feature is overall a positive. Next is the USB cable is only about 3 feet long, so I'm just really nitpicking here, but just putting out everything as I see it that's a potential negative. All right, so let's talk about the pros. And number 1 overall pro is just the sound quality. The quality of the preamps, I think, is pretty outstanding. And the second pro is just the overall ease of use and the friendliness to beginners. If this is your first USB audio interface, you're in good hands. It's basically foolproof, especially with the smart gain feature. Third pro is just the overall size. So I know I listed more cons than pros, but that's mostly just because I'm an overall negative and cynical person, and it's easier for me to remember things that I don't like as opposed to things that I do like. But don't let that put you off this device. I absolutely have no regrets about buying it. I'm really liking it. I feel like it's just fun to use actually. And I've already talked enough about the smart gain feature, but I also think that the loopback feature is something that's really awesome. There's so many applications for that. I'm not sure of other devices in this price range that have something like that built into them. I hope that was helpful. I hope I made your decision easier, but it's possible that I may have complicated it some, but I just wanted to give you my impressions and kind of an overview of this device. If you have any questions, if there's something I left out, or if anything was unclear, don't hesitate to put them in the comments. And really anything else, I just like interacting with you guys on the comments, so it's always appreciated. As always, like if you liked, dislike if you disliked, and consider subscribing if you enjoyed this or found anything of value in this video. It would be greatly appreciated. And as always, we'll just see you in the next video.